Hi, everybody. I always love that voice, recording in progress. So we are, I've been talking to Claude Blanc for not only for almost an hour now, but we've been talking last week, and we had a long Zoom. And I said to Claude just before we went on air, there should be a movie made of your life. Because as I'm digesting all the things and the components of your life and from where you came from and what you're doing now, it's beyond fascinating and interesting. It really should be a screenplay, a movie of your life. Claude and I met, I guess it was LinkedIn, this wonderful place where people can meet and get together. We met and a couple of messages back and forth, and we kind of decided we'd chat. And unbeknownst to me and Claude, we could have yelled out the windows because we're kind of neighbors. So there's so much to Claude that it was his suggestion that we break this up into three separate components. So this portion of the interview today, which is April 27th, and it's actually cold here in Monmouth County, and I don't know when I'll be able to get rid of my sweatshirt. It just doesn't seem to want to end. But today it's Claude Blanc, Volume 1, Global Early Years, Africa, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, India, Nepal. So he's had an amazing life, the first part of his life, which we're going to talk about today. He's an amazing businessman. He's a consultant. He'll tell you about that shortly. Managed budgets sometimes in excess of $1 billion. So he has this amazing consulting business now. But anyway, I've said enough for now and best. So this is Volume 1, everybody, and Volume 2 we'll go into the middle part of his life. Volume 3 into his consulting and business and the spiritual side to him. So there's so much here to unpack. So anyway, Claude, I'm really thrilled to introduce you. Maybe just a little bit of a quick bio and background, and then we can kind of jump in to your globe trotting. So take it away.
Thank you, Calvin. So, my name is Claude Blanc, as Calvin said. As you can tell, I speak a little funny. I wasn't born in New Jersey. I was born in France, actually from a colonial family, a French colonial family. My grandparents on my father's side were in Indochina, in French Indochina. My grandparents on my mother's side were in Africa. After I was conceived, my mother came back to France to give birth, and we went right back. I understand that my first cradle was a drawer on a freighter on the way back to Africa. And in those years, there weren't too many white babies in that part of Africa. This was in Bangui in Central African Republic, what is now Central African Republic. And apparently, I was at the talk of the town. All the young women from the village would come and see that white baby because they had never seen a white baby. Wow. Unfortunately, I got sick. I nearly died of malaria, and so I had to be sent back to France. And from then on, I was shuttling back and forth between France and Africa. I lived with a variety of families. At first, with my grandfather, who by then had retired back to France, and a variety of other families. Then boarding schools. And there was an incredible tension between life in a boarding school, which is very Dickensian in many ways. I mean, for my first year in boarding school, I was 9 years old, and there was nobody to take care of me, right? I was there the whole year, and I had holes in my shoes and holes in my pants, and nobody to take care of me. On the other hand, then I would go back to Africa for the summer, and there everything was allowed. It was a pure freedom. The horses, the pool, the tennis, and then back in jail in the winter. And this was very difficult, and I got very mixed up. And definitely my childhood, my early teen years, and my even early adulthood were very messed up. Even though I was a baptized Christian, I had rejected all that, and I was very much into Nietzsche. So spoke Zarathustra, right? Camus and Sartre. The whole idea of existentialism, the absurd, as Camus writes about the absurd. This was so much what my life was about. And Nietzsche, that concept of the Superman. So I decided to cast away all type of social constraints and figure out, well, once I've done that, what's left? Well, maybe truth would be that. Well, that led me into all kind of troubles, drugs, delinquents, and so on and so forth. Then, so my father had committed suicide, and I did not know about it. I did not find out.
How old were you when?
Well, I was 3 years old, but I wasn't told until I was 12.
Wow.
And so during all those years, I fantasized about how my father had died. I didn't know, so I made up all kind of stories. Made up stories that he had been killed at war during World War II. Well, that was impossible because I was born after World War II, right? But this was all the fantasies I was going because I needed to explain that reality. And I must say, as a child and as an adolescent, the idea of suicide was very present, precisely because I found everything so absurd, right? And that led me into some very dark places. And when I was probably at the bottom of it all, in some circumstances, which I don't know how it happened, the Bhagavad Gita fell into my hands. The Bhagavad Gita is a small book of Hindu spirituality that speaks about the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, his disciple, and it's really a song of love. It's all about love. And when I read that little book, which was not easy because the language was a language that I was not accustomed to, of Hindu mysticism, I thought, well, if what this book speaks about were true, then my life could have a meaning. And I decided I'm going to go and check it out.
Wow.
I'm going to go to India.
Wow.
Now, in those days, I was living with a bunch of junkies. And they looked at me and say, "You're not going anywhere. You're a piece of junk, and you're not going to go anywhere." I said, "No, I'm going to India." $50 in my pocket.
Wow.
And a train ticket from Paris to Istanbul, and there I was on my way to India.
How old were you?
I was 19.
19.
And that journey was unbelievable. It was incredible from the get-go. It was like being born again, seeing everything with new eyes. So I had that little book with me, and I was reading it every day. I was meditating on the Bhagavad Gita every day, and everything around me was so new. So first the communities in Istanbul, in Sultan Ahmet, which is the old part of Istanbul, and meeting other people that were on the road and their experiences and what seemed to me their wisdom, right? And then, so from Turkey to Iran, to Tehran, which it was still the time of the Shah, right? Then from there down to Kuwait, then back into Iran, in Abadan, in southern Iran, one day I was there, and I saw at the end of the road a man, long hair, surrounded by a big crowd, and they were making fun of him and they were pushing him around and so on and so forth. So I got closer, and he was a Westerner. He was actually American. The guy was holding a wooden bowl in one hand and a Bible in the other, and he was in complete delirium. He made absolutely no sense. So I chased away those people that were around him, and I took him with me. He had no shoes, and I had a few bucks left, so I went to buy him a pair of shoes. And then I took him to the hotel where I was staying, which was one of those hotels where you pay 25 cents a night, right? And the owner of the place said, "Oh, the guy can't stay here. He's crazy." I said, "I'm paying for my room. He's staying with me." And that was a complete nightmare. The guy was hallucinating the whole night, and I must say I was a little nervous and scared. The next morning, I put him in a cab, sent him to the American embassy, because by then I had found his American passport, and I went on a bus that was taking me towards Pakistan. And so this was one of so many adventures that happened on that trip. That night, we stopped in the mountains on our way to Zaidan, and the bus. So traveling by bus in southern Iran in those days, right? Goats and people of all sorts, and all kind of merchandise. And there was a Haji, a pilgrim, who was coming back from Mecca, and he was chanting, and with him the whole bus was chanting as well. And I was there in my little corner listening and watching, and I thought, wow, this is so amazing, right? Then at night, when we got to the stop, they were all surrounding me. There was one guy who could speak English, could translate, and they were asking me a million questions. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Where do you come from? What is it like where you're from? And, so, and then they were feeding me tea and food, and never stopped. Right? The hospitality that I experienced that whole trip was amazing.
Wow.
And then eventually, so from Zaidan, crossed into Quetta in Pakistan, and then from Quetta up to Kandahar in Afghanistan. Kandahar, which is which was the main point for Taliban. While in those days there was no Taliban yet, right? And then from Kandahar went up to Kabul. I remember an experience with a man in Kandahar, an older man sitting in front of his house, and we could hardly communicate. But what I got from him was so much wisdom. I couldn't tell you exactly what he said, but I felt incredible wisdom. And I was going, look, this guy has never moved from the front of his house. He's never traveled anywhere. And he's got so much wisdom. And here I am, traveling the world, going all over the place. And am I going to find that kind of wisdom? Should I sit in front of my door and wait for it to come to me? Then Kabul, then from Kabul through Khyber Pass. So Khyber Pass is the pass between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And already in those days, you had those guys up in the mountains on the sides with their guns and everything, because the Afghani are warrior people. They are from that part of the world where, and then all of Pakistan, Lahore, Rawalpindi, and crossed finally into India at Amritsar. Amritsar was the first city where Amritsar is the capital for the Sikhs, the Sikh religion. And I was on a bridge looking down, and there was a festival, some religious festival going on down there. They were distributing food and so on. And a kid came to me, took me by the hand, said, come, come, come. And he brought me down where all those people there said, sit down. So I sat, and I was sitting there, and people were bringing me food, and like if I had always been there, it was an amazing experience. Then moved on to Delhi, then moved into the ruins of the ancient Delhi, where there was a Buddhist community there. Spent some time there, and then moved on to Accra, and then Varanasi. And Varanasi is the holy city for the Hindus, and you can feel it. I mean, it's in the air, right? And there, I was living with the bigger monks, with the beggars, the bigger monks, the sadhus, right? Sleeping outdoors, yeah. So that the Ganges, the river, the sacred river. One day I was so. There are a lot of pilgrims in Varanasi, right? And the beggars just going in a row, only in one row, with their head out and hoping to get a coin. And the pilgrims go along the whole row, giving a coin to everyone, right? So here I was, me too. I crouched there, and put my hand out, right? And I definitely fitted in, because by then I looked very much the part, right? However, not completely. And so there was a pilgrim who was going around giving coin to everybody. Then he gave me a coin. Then the second take, he looked at me, took a coin back. He said, this guy is not one of them. So yeah.
So you're around 19. You're in these strange places, and you're not afraid to be in such strange places, strange customs, parts of the world that you're not familiar with, and you're okay with that.
No, I was never afraid. I was never, ever, I mean, was there danger? Yes. I could have also gotten sick, right? I mean, a lot of people got very sick on the road, okay? I never got sick. I drank every water. No, I never paid any attention to the water I was drinking, okay? And it was a choice. I said, well, hopefully I'll build the immunity against whatever. And well, I got sick one night, in Pakistan, but that was it. Okay, I had some iodine pills with me just in case, but I never got sick. And no, I was not afraid, because I've made every effort I could to fit in, to really be part of the landscape, and trying to understand. I wanted to understand those cultures, and that's where I developed really a love for diversity. We are all different. We all come from different places. We all have different experiences, but we have a commonality. There is a commonality in our humanity that's much greater than our diversity. And so I've learned there to respect diversity and to respect people for who they are. So no, I was not afraid. Then I ended up in Kathmandu. Okay, and in Kathmandu was the capital of the hippies. I mean, in those years, it was filled with hippies, and I lived in some of those hippie communes. And I also had a guru there, and that guru. So I was always searching, right, and meditating on the Gita, and that guru at some point told me, look, what you're looking for, you're gonna find it in your own tradition. Go back to your own tradition. Go back to your own roots. And my roots were Christianity, because I had been baptized, even if I had rejected all that a long time ago. So I picked up the Bible and the New Testament, and I started reading it. And it was striking. I mean, I remember what struck me there was the Acts of the Apostle, the description of the early Christian community, where everything was in common. They were of one heart and one mind. I say, well, that's beautiful. But that's utopia. I mean, maybe back then, but certainly not today. The church, I know, does not look like that at all, right? However, one day I was in a bar that was frequented by all the hippies, and a priest walked in, and he dropped a bunch of leaflet on the counter, and I went to check it out, and it was an invitation to the service, the Easter service, which was taking place in one of the embassies in Kathmandu. Now, you've got to picture what I looked back then. Okay, I had my hair were shoulder length, right?
Wow.
They had not been combed in months. You know, I had no shoes anymore, so I was going barefoot. I was wearing Indian pajamas and a vest, and that was it, right?
Wow.
So I looked, I looked a little different from what I looked. And so on that Sunday morning, I taught another guy to come with me, and the two of us were on our way to the service I don't remember which embassy it was. And we get there, and the whole diplomatic corps is there. You know, all the ambassadors and the staff and the women with the big hats, and everybody in the best attire, and me looking really like a bum. You know, and I was standing in the back, but for some reason I felt that this was just for me. You know, that this whole thing was not for them. They couldn't get it. But it was for me. There was a presence of the divine for me, which was really transformative. You know, eventually I found my way back to Europe, and
Wow.
talk about that next time.
Yes. Wow. Now all those countries, Nepal always fascinates me with the mountains, and I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite, but from sheer beauty, I guess Nepal.
Yeah, it's the top of the world. You know, it's really at the top of the world. It is. I mean, all land is holy, right? But to me, Nepal is particularly holy. You know, there is something. I mean, I had so many experiences there. I remember. I was staying, I was boarding with a family, you know, and again, I was meditating every day, and I had my little altar and stuff that in my room. And one day, one of the kids of the family barged into my room and saw me there, you know, meditating. And so he closed the door, and then 2 minutes later, the whole family was there looking at me meditating in my room, right? Mm. From that day on, I never had to pay anything, and they fed me until I left.
Wow!
Because I was the holy man in residence, I guess. You know, wow. You know, and I've had many experiences of that sort while I was there. It was we could go on for hours.
Yeah. So in general, people were so glad to see because you were different. You know.
Yeah, I was different, and at the same time, I fitted in. You know, I never, you know, I tried to fit in as much as I could, but definitely, yes, I was who I was, right? So they were curious. They wanted to know why, you know. It was an amazing experience overall. That's for sure. And you know, so that's a long way from being an executive coach in corporate America, right? Yeah. And yet not. And yet not all that much, you know, because that's where I understood how that's where I learned how to understand the human condition, you know, where I understood to dig into things deeper, now, not to take things for face value, but really go in depth, and that's certainly something that is serving me well in my current position.
Yeah. I think, and I'm trying to process that, the experience that you got, it's about as pure and wonderful and deep and diverse people. Yeah. And yeah. You had so many different kinds of people, and it helped to form you and why you've become such a successful coach today. So it's kind of a good place to kind of do a wrap and get ready for volume 2, which is the next part of your life. But this is so interesting. I do have one quick question to ask you. It's a little off topic, but listening to you, it's not so off topic. So here's the question. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend the day with.
Somebody I'd like to spend the day with. Well, there was that that Buddhist monk. I never remember his name. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk that passed away not long ago, right? I read his book. I mean, actually, I could look for his book and see his name again. I would have loved to spend some time with him, because he has taught so much. He has brought so much to our world. So. And I wish I could honor him remembering his name, but I can't remember it now.
Okay. Hey, that's there. When I was growing up and we had the Vietnam War, there was a Buddhist Vietnamese monk to protest, set himself on fire, and to this day, and I wrote about that a little bit in my novel. Things that kind of moved me, and again, my vision is very, having grown up in New Jersey and basically never left, and there's a big wide world out there that you've experienced. So I'm kind of channeled, and you're not, and you've experienced, and I guess that's been my fascination. The more I've plunged into reading about you, and I'm just so glad, the universe kind of brought us together because to explore your life, and you said something, we're all one.
Yeah. So I have his name. It's Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay.
Okay, that's definitely. I would have loved to spend some time with him. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I'm just I'm in my own small little way. When I came up with the idea for this channel, conversation with Calvin, we the species, because it's my firm belief that we're really just one species, and if we don't, and we are running out of time, and the pandemic taught me that something like that can come along, and there isn't a spot on Earth, not in Antarctica, not in Finland, not nowhere, that is safe from the virus. So that's one. Number two, if we don't fix the climate as one species, we just ain't going to have a place to live anymore. The good news for you and me, Claude, down the road a little bit, you and I both are going to have beachfront property. For about 2 weeks.
I tell my wife that all the time.
we're gonna where we live, we'll be able to sell it for a fortune.
Yeah, and one of my daughters is an environmental engineer, and right now she's living with us, so she reminds us also of those of the situation we're in.
Yes.
All the time. She's very sensitive to it, obviously.
Yes. Oh, by the way, the other bonding thing about you and I is your children went to Rutgers.
Three out of four went to Rutgers. Yes.
Which is great. We have so much more to talk about, and we will in volume 2 coming up. So I just want to thank you so much for you being so gracious and sharing some of this stuff. You're right. We could talk for hours and hours just on that little trip. A million questions to ask. I'm just amazed you never got sick. My goodness, back in those days. So it's a great journey.
So yes, so when I was in Kathmandu, there were all the guys from the Peace Corps, the American Peace Corps, who would not drink anything but the water from the water fountain at the embassy, and they all got sick. Wow. They were all getting sick. Right? I never got sick.
Wow. That's a wow. That's so funny. So it's a good place to close volume 1. And again, I am so grateful to the universe up there for kind of having brought us together, because this is so fascinating for me. You are. So anyway, to be continued. We'll break off now, and you'll be back soon. And I just want to thank you again, Claude.